How's it going? I hope you're doing very well. Today we're going to have a look at the Korg KAOSS Replay, a dynamic effects processor and stereo sampler, two of my absolute favorite things in any hardware device. Of course, what stands out when you first see this device is this large screen. This is a touch capacitive LCD screen. This is what you're going to use to trigger and modulate your effects. Below that, we have 16 adjustable velocity sensitive pads, which you can sample onto, resample onto, or load samples directly to via the micro SD card slot in the front. To the left and right of the pads, we have two assignable crossfaders, which you can create different crossfade groups. That's a lot of fun. You can process incoming audio over the phono input. There's an adjustable switch for high or low gain. You can also bring audio in directly over USB-C because this is a class-compliant audio interface. There's also a 1/4-inch jack for a microphone input with dedicated effects and a dedicated trim knob for adjusting the gain of your microphone, and then a headphone input, which you can assign different monitor groups to, or just monitor the main mix. The KAOSS Replay is full of useful effects. We have loads of filters, distortions, loopers, delays, reverbs, and so many more useful live performance and studio effects. There's 128 available effects in the Korg KAOSS Replay. Let me show you how you can change the effects and assign them to the 12 program memory slots. Right now, I want to change slot 1 to something like a high-pass filter plus delay, even though reverb filter does sound great. Let's get some music going first, though. The amount of depth that I have on the effect will also be saved into the program memory. Press down on data entry and find your new effect. I love this one. It's quantized to the BPM output, which is exactly the same as my samples playback. Press program right and select the slot. That's now logged into slot 1. Here's 2. Here's 1. I can also lock in effects so that I don't have to use my finger and do other things. Really good for loopers, but let me show you with the high-pass filter and delay first. This is called touch hold. It remembers the last place I put my finger. If I want to record a finger movement, I can hold pad motion, and it will play that back. If I hold shift and press that, it will reverse the pad motion. Let's use a looper effect to transition from one lower energy part of a song that's taking place on some external gear to a higher energy part of a song also taking place on some external gear. I'm going to select line phono so that I turn on the input for this gear. That's using the phono input in the back. And I'm going to go into my global settings, change my clock source from internal to external MIDI because I do have MIDI clock coming from this gear over here. Go back to the KAOSS pad and select my low pass filter looper. All right, let's use our KAOSS Replay to affect some external gear. You can see the BPM output is set to external, meaning the effects are being quantized to an external MIDI signal. Now let's talk about these crossfaders right here. These are assignable crossfaders. You can assign two groups to the crossfaders. Right now I have group B assigned to this sample and group A assigned to this sample. I'm going to have this crossfader down and leave this crossfader up. Let's switch over our clocking back to our internal clock and let's crossfade between these two different samples. They are playing at the same BPM, so the crossfade should be pretty seamless. You can also use your effects to do this. I could play with this low pass filter looper forever. There's a whole bunch of loopers on here. It's pretty wild. Look at all the loopers. Now let me show you how we can use these crossfaders to transition from external audio to sampled audio in the KAOSS replay. I'm going to hold down Group B and make sure I have my line phono assignment. You can see it's blinking. That means it's assigned to a group, currently Group B. And then Group A is assigned to this sample. We know that this sample is playing at 130 BPM. Our BPM out is 172, so we're going to have to fix that first. Let's go over to our BPM output, bring that down to 130. Now, bring this crossfader down, this crossfader up. All right, let's give it a shot. I'm going to time the playback of the machines with the beginning of this sample, just by ear. You can see the signals coming in on this crossfader for that group. Voila, we've transitioned from a sample over to some external hardware. All right, let's do some sampling. To get started with sampling, hold down the sample button, select the bank you want to sample onto. This is bank B, slot 2. We can select the loop length that we want, a 64 beat loop, that's really long. Let's do a 16 beat loop. You can also set it to a one shot, which will trigger with a button press and then end the recording with a second button press. It'll immediately set it as a one shot, which is a velocity sensitive sample. Quantized loops are not velocity sensitive samples. We'll get into that in a second. Let's get a 16 beat loop. If we change the auto trigger to 0, the sampling would begin immediately. That's because the threshold has been crossed because the threshold is 0. We want to bring the audio threshold above 0 so that our incoming audio actually triggers the sampling. So right now, our incoming audio is not triggering the sampling, which is good. It means that we can press start and it will grab a sample. Let's just sample the music that we had playing here a moment ago. Right now we have external audio set to this group, so let's bring that crossfader up. I'm going to press the pad so it's ready for sampling, and now we can hit play. Starts playing back immediately. Let's stop this audio. And this is just our sample. Let's have a look at our sample. Hold trigger pad edit and select the sample that you want to edit. Once you're in trigger pad edit, you can bounce around to other samples for editing. Here we can adjust the start and end point of our samples. You can either press down on the encoder and move it like this, and you can see that the start and end point are moving together. That's because they're linked. You can unlink them if you'd like, and then you can move them independently. You can also just move around your waveform here and mark in where you want the start and end point to be. So now we've changed the endpoint to kind of the middle of the sample. Here you can change the native BPM for the sample. Exclusive assign is like setting a choke group. Click on that. If we have exclusive assign set to 1 and another sample set to 1, only one sample can play at a time. Not because it's set to 1, but because it's using group 1. You can also adjust the level of your sample. 100 is the max volume, and that's by default. You can change the offset of the sample. You can also adjust the beat of the sample, but that's only if you have this disengaged. So once you have link disengaged, you can actually adjust the beat of the whole sample here. So now it's only playing 4 beats. Here's a one shot. This is a velocity sensitive sample. And it will play all the way through. If you ever just want to mute everything, shift gate, and that will turn off all the audio and stop everything. That's really important because as you're doing one shots, you'll be like, please stop playing, shift gate. Just remember that function. Now, song, what's different about song versus any of the other modes for the samples is that song just plays all the way through. It's not velocity sensitive, and then once it's done playing, it stops. Unlike loop, which will loop, song just doesn't loop. And that's really it when it comes to sample editing. It's very streamlined, it's very simple. Let me show you how to do some resampling now. Hold shift, select sample. This will take you into the resampling menu. So you can see it says resampling above sampling. It's the exact same idea as what we had before. You select a pad from here. We're in the resampling menu, so we could resample onto a different pad if we wanted. I have a drum break over here, and I'm going to resample myself playing with some effects on the KAOSS pad onto this pad right here. So I'm going to get that pad ready for sampling and then trigger the sample. may have noticed I let that grain shifter keep playing. I turned that sample off so that we didn't hear it playing on top of this sample, because samples do automatically loop after you're finished sampling. Let's have a look at stretch and sync. This sample's playing at about 170 BPM. I know that 130 BPM is going to completely change the way this sample plays. So I'm going to hit sync and then press this sample. Bring it up to what I think is the right BPM. There we go. Now, variable pitch allows us to change the BPM, but it will actually change the pitch of the sample with it and not time stretch it. Turn sync off, hold variable pitch, select the sample, turn variable pitch on, and press play. Pressing quantize will engage a timing correction for the start time of your samples so that they're better synced with the BPM output. To assign mute or solo to one of your samples, you can hold down mute and select a sample, and that will add it to the mute group, or hold down solo and select a sample, and that'll add it to the solo group. Then to engage one of those groups, you simply hit the mute or solo button, and that will engage mute or solo and or both of them at the same time. Let's have a look at hotQ. You can see it says hotQ/program memory, meaning that these buttons are shared with the hotQ. To set up hotQ, hold hotQ and select the pad that you want to affect with hotQ. As you can see, there is 12 available slots. Hotq is basically like slicing a sample, so you can jump between different moments in time within that sample. There's two ways to set it up. You can either manually put it in, or you can press these buttons as the sample plays. Let's try both. If you want to manually edit hotQ, hold shift and select hotQ. This will take you into the hotQ edit. Here you can actually just go to a hotQ slot, press down, and adjust what position it's in. So we can bring hotQ slot 1 back to the beginning of the sample. If you want to delete a hotQ point, select delete, and then select a hotQ point. There's a whole slew of vocal effects that are only available in the KAOSS replay. All right, we got our microphone plugged into the KAOSS replay. It has a dedicated trim knob for the gain input on that microphone. So the first thing we have to do to hear our microphone is turn on the mic inputs. We press mic, and there we go. Now we have the mic turned on. You can hear I have some effects already. Hold shift and select mic to go into the mic input setup. We can turn that delay off. Here's our EQ. We can adjust the EQ, make it more bassy, more mid-range heavy, turn up those highs. You could save it this way, right to one of our EQ memory slots. And if we want, we could turn on the delay. Here's a mid delay, or a short delay, so it sounds like a robot. Mid delay is nice. Big reverb, smaller reverb, and a really small reverb. Something that you want to keep in mind when you're playing with the microphone is that the microphone effects are pre-KAOSS pad effects. So if you're using a KAOSS pad effect like a vocoder, you may not want to have delay and reverb turned on. But let's play with some of the vocoders. For a lot of the vocal effects, you're going to want to use touch hold. So let's turn on the vocoder, and then let's turn on that mic input. This sounds amazing. This is a really great sounding vocoder. We have minor and major chords to play with.
A pitch corrector. Hey, this is me sounding perfect in F major. I could sing anything and I can't do it wrong.
Oh, hey, there's a lot of these
To play with.
We have note plus formant control.
This is really cool. With pitch correction. Now I can't screw up.
Let's turn off the microphone. There's a whole lot of fun to be had with all the different vocoders and voice changing effects that are available in the KAOSS replay. I'm absolutely in love with them, and I will be sampling them like crazy into this device and into my other samplers and my computer alike. Let's have a look at some of the noisy synth effects as well. Let's get out of touch hold first. Oh, check this out. Here's pump noise. Let's bring that depth down because it'll be really loud. It pumps to the BPM. That's something I was using other devices to do. And now I don't have to do that anymore. One of the last things I want to talk about with this device is that you can use it as a surface controller. This is a MIDI controller too. That's why I think the KAOSS Replay is really this awesome utilitarian device to have in any setup. You can use it standalone to play some drums and trigger samples, or you can use it as an effects processor for external gear, which is my favorite way to use it, or you can just use it as a voice processor because it has plenty of great sounding vocal effects. As I was saying, you can use it as a MIDI controller. Hold Shift and select Global to go into your Surface controller. And here we can either use the SD card reader, that way we don't have to use a micro SD card slot in the front. We can just transfer files over USB-C right into the back through the USB-C port, or we can select X and Y control. Let's go ahead and save that project. Cool, now we're in an X and Y axis MIDI controller, and you set the MIDI settings in your global menu. Let's check out the other one. Shift, Global, Fader control. This is rad. So now we have 8 faders that we can use a touchscreen with, and we can assign MIDI CCs to all these different faders. Hold Shift to get out of this menu. If you want to change what the effects target, you can hold Shift and select Line Phono, and here you can actually choose where the effects target different things. You can have it target a different group, you can have it target the incoming audio, or disable the effects targeting the incoming audio. You can also change this from being an insert effect to a send effect by going in the global menu and changing the connection from direct to send. When it's set to send, only the effects will let audio pass through. So this won't have any audio pass through. You're just choosing sources to go into the KAOSS Replay. Lastly, when you want to save your project, hit Project, and you can save as, or if you've already saved your project, you're going to want to hit Overwrite, and that's just going to resave the project in its current settings. That's going to be it from me. My name is Matthew, aka EasyBot. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Korg KAOSS Replay.